Hi, Chris. It's so nice to have you here. Welcome.
Hello, and thank you so much. It's a real pleasure to be here.
Thank you for being here. This is really great. Our viewers have just watched your wonderful film. I still remember when I've seen it the first time, I really thought, oh, I have missed something in the cinema because it just looked so splendid. I couldn't believe it was a fan film. What was your motivation to do a fan film, to put so much work in there to spread it out in the world like that?
Well, thank you for saying those kind words. That's really great. And thank you to German Tolkien Tage for showing our film, because 10 years on, we're still proud of the little contribution to kind of imagining Middle-earth that we were able to make, even though it's clearly just a bunch of us with no budget making a film. Well, the idea was kind of started from, first of all, realizing and being independent filmmakers, making films for no money, making some zombie films and some horror films, but wanting to do something more ambitious and wanting to kind of do something big and do something. We realized it was possible to make something more spectacular on a low budget if you planned it well and if you kind of had a good team. And I was just finished being a student and I just kind of graduated, and I wanted to take on an ambitious film project. And I kind of realized that if I made something I really cared about passionately, then it would hopefully be better. And so I realized what I loved the most in literature was The Lord of the Rings, and I wanted to create something that was inspired by or based on Tolkien's imagined world. And that kind of led me into thinking, what could I do as a fan film for no money, but do it at a high quality with a bunch of friends and some fans and some friendly teammates. And then I settled on this idea that we could adapt this tiny part of the appendices. And I figured it out. It took some time. I had to talk to a lot of friends, convince them to join the project. And eventually I realized, okay, this little chapter where Aragorn hunts for Gollum, that's the one. That's the one that we could pull it off just about with literally a budget of a little bit of savings I had and a lot of talented people. And so when we realized maybe it was possible to do this chapter, then we kind of started, and we just didn't even stop. We didn't even stop to think about it. We just started making it and kept on making it for 2 years, and then eventually finished it and put it out there.
That would have been my next question. How long did it take for you to really, from the first idea to the movie, so you could really show it to fans and put it out in the world? So you said 2 years. Was that the total time from the first idea?
I think it was, yeah. From the moment I sort of realized, hey, I think this is possible. Okay, I need to write down a script and sort of adapt the material into something filmable. I think then I spent a few weeks writing the first version in April, probably 2007, that would have been. And then we filmed the first shots about 4 or 5 months later when we'd organized everything and got some costumes and I think we had 2 orcs, some costumes we'd borrowed from another filmmaker, brilliant fan filmmaker, Kate Madison, who made very ambitious films, Board of Hope. Borrowed some costumes off her. She was very generous, and she even came to help out. And we went to Wales and we shot a couple of scenes that autumn. And then over the next 9 months, we made all the rest of the costumes and shot the rest of the scenes on weekends and here and there and everywhere. And then we spent another year editing it, doing visual effects, all in our spare time while we were all working our jobs and all that stuff. And then eventually it was finally ready. And 2 years all in, beginning to end.
It really sounds crazy, but I think that's always when it's involved with, doing something from your heart, not to earn money with or so. Really in your spare time and with whatever tricks and tips and friends you have to borrow stuff from or to do stuff with. How many people were involved in total in the making of this movie?
Yeah, it was amazing because you almost lose track along the way of exactly how many, because for the first shoot there were about 15 of us, who went to Wales, or 10 or 15, and we were camping out there. And then over time, more and more people joined the team and came to the next shoot. And then the next shoot was 3 months later, and some people were not available. So a new bunch of crew came along and helped out on that shoot with all the kind of makeup and hair and the wigs and all the stuff we had to do, cameras, obviously, sound. And so every shoot was like making a different short film sometimes. And half the crew were able to come back. And then there were a load of new people coming in as well who really wanted to be part of a Lord of the Rings fan film. And so over the time of making a film like that, and you kind of have to do it in small chunks if you're making it without a real budget. So we broke it up in small chunks, and over time it was well over 100 people. And I think it's probably, when you count all of the visual effects and the kind of post-production artists who are making those fantastic vistas and landscapes mostly in the computer for the film, then there's another 40 or 50 artists there. So it's over 150, wow. I think, in the credits, which is fantastic to think, and I'm so grateful to all those brilliant people who joined along our adventure. So, yeah.
Oh, that sounds amazing. Did you also, grow together more as friends? The people that you already knew, and then you created kind of another different kind of fellowship over the years? I mean, you grow together, don't you?
Yeah, I think that was the magic of it for us as well, was that, the core team, who were the main actors, so Adrian, who's playing Aragorn, and the core team, Gareth, who was the voice of Gollum, but he was also doing camera and lighting on some shoots. And then on one shoot, he was the orc, like the big orc who's fighting Aragorn at the end. And then the core team of the sort of producers, who we formed a circle of 6 or 7 of us who were meeting regularly every week, planning all the shoots, doing all the hard work of the kind of producing. And so between the sort of 7 to 10 of us, we ran the project, and we did become really close friends throughout that, and still are today, which is fantastic.
So you weren't
go to those guys so much.
You weren't fed up of each other at some point?
No, I don't think we were. I think we just, and we always try and just have reunions now, and it's, you have to make, we still do it. And I think because we all came at it with a spirit of having fun as well as making a good film, and we didn't have that studio pressure, or we didn't have, money pressure to kind of it was about having fun and showing our love of the material as well as making a good film. So we did just have a laugh, and so much stuff goes wrong, costumes falling off mid-shoot, orcs who can't see and keep running the wrong way, and all of this hilarious stuff. You can't make it up. So you just go through this experience together, and sometimes it goes wrong, and it's like going to war, and you're kind of scrambling together to make it work, which is great. And then it does bring you together when you're all out there in the freezing cold in the middle of the night, trying to get this Black Rider scene to sort of work, but he's wearing a mask and he can't see where his sword is, and then Adrian drops the flaming brand, and then it goes out and it starts raining, and everyone's been awake for 12 hours solid, freezing their asses off, pardon my French. But so we had a lot of fun. I think on any independent film like that, that's completely driven by people doing it for the love of doing it, you get this bonding, and it is a fellowship, and it is a kind of fantastic meeting of minds and fantastic teamwork, and everybody kind of grows through it and sort of becomes fast friends. So yeah, we really had that, which is great.
You talked about a few, let's call it bloopers. What was the worst thing that happened?
Oh, it was crazy. I mean, trying to do Gollum on a budget, and trying to make him look good, that was always the biggest challenge of the film.
He does look brilliant.
Well, when we realized we can keep him in the sack for most of it, that's when we knew it was possible to actually make, this film. But then we knew we needed to show a little bit of him. You couldn't just have a voice in the sack. So we needed to show his hand and stuff, and we needed to so we had some hilarious scenes where we had an actor, a friend of mine called Matt, and he had his hand sort of all made up with extended fingers, a bit like E.T., but for every finger to be like Gollum's hand, because it was supposed to be a small hand. And then we put him in this oversized sack, and he was supposed to be reaching out and trying to find some food that Strider's given him. And unfortunately, the scene got cut from final film. It's a hilarious one. And of course, he couldn't see a thing as to where his hand was. So we have these ridiculous outtakes where he's kind of complaining, saying, I can't get it. But no, we had just a lot of fun. I think when all the orcs were on set, and we managed to get up to 12 or 13, maybe 14 orc costumes. And we got these brilliant guys who are stage combat guys who are brilliant at doing choreographed sword fights. And they all got into the orc costumes, and they just became orcs. And they were just in between every shot. They were messing around, dancing, trying to feed each other crisps through a tiny silicone prosthetic mouth that didn't really open properly. And generally complaining in an orcish manner about the catering, which was very low budget, so they are right to complain.
You mentioned low budget earlier, Chris, but how low budget was it? I mean, where did your budget come from? You said you had some savings, but did you also have a fund, or I don't know,
not
donating?
Really. It was before crowdfunding really kicked off, but we kind of did a bit of crowdfunding through the website we built at the time. So we managed to get a few £100 through that as donations, and I kind of tried to plan the whole thing to be possible with my savings, which was basically about £1,000. It ended up going a bit over, and we spent about 3,000 in the end. But the idea was because it was a non-profit film, it was non-commercial, it was going to be released for free. We're never going to make money from it. Didn't want to, just wanted to make something. Everybody sort of pitched in and put up with the very cheap food that was paid for with that money and the costumes and just the basic essentials. And, a lot of film industry people were also very generous and helped us out with a favor here and there, a camera, lending us a camera here, or, some equipment, or coming down with their camera equipment and helping shoot a second camera angle, for example. And so we kind of mobilized a lot of very talented sort of film professionals to come and kind of get stuck in and help us out along the way. And of course, that really boosted the quality of what we were able to do. So,
That sounds really great. I mean, that's when you really get to know people for what they do for you. And we're getting to know you a little better, because our fans who are watching right now have sent us some questions for you. So I'm just going to check them. One question is, which was the funniest and the hardest scene to shoot?
The funniest and hardest scene? Well, the hardest scene was the fight scene with all the orcs. Because those type of action scenes, you have to choreograph every sword move in advance. Otherwise, it can be dangerous, or it can be, it won't look good on the day, and every actor has to know their moves. And it's like a ballet. It's like a choreography of every fall, every sword swipe, every clash. And so the fight choreographers, Ruth and Rachel, pre-planned that for about 3 months beforehand. It was still the hardest scene to shoot because everything had to be ready for those 2 days we shot it over. Firstly, all the actors had to know their moves. All the costumes had to fit them. And we had some brilliant costume designers and students at Central St. Martin's who came on board making costumes, and fantastic costume team put their hearts and souls into those costumes, which is great. But then getting them all to fit and not to be falling off in the middle of the shot, and all that stuff, and just managing to get all the coverage of shots from different angles was just logistically the hardest thing. as for the funniest scene, I think we had a laugh with almost everything, but there were a few moments, I think, you know, when you're trying to do stuff with Gollum, I don't know, it becomes funny, and just stuff with orcs just becomes great. I kind of really enjoyed when the orcs were kind of ad-libbing or improvising some extra dynamics between their group. And at the time, I really wanted to just go off and shoot a whole nother fanfic series about a band of orcs marauding around Middle-earth.
Yes, please. Yes, do that. Do that.
They were great, you know, and it would be amazing. I'd love to do it, to be honest. We'd have to get all those orcs back together and kind of character them up. But we did one improvised scene like that, and part of it's in the film, and that was really cool because it just was a bit spontaneous, and it came out of the characters of the actors playing the orcs, and they kind of did that Cockney thing, which came from Peter Jackson, which came from the Peter Jackson trilogy. Okay. The Cockney accents for orcs. That was one thing I loved in the trilogy. I don't know if it comes across in German, but yeah, that's something we found very fun to play with. Very funny.
I have a few more questions for you.
Yeah.
You talked about zombie movies. What zombie movies did you make?
A lot of films probably I don't want anybody to ever see because it was my very first attempt. Terrible failures. But yeah, while I was a student at the University of York, which is in the north of England, the campus there was kind of a concrete jungle. And in the summer, when all the students went home, it was empty, it was deserted. So we shot this kind of 28 Days Later style, kind of zombie style film there, which was a lot of fun. So yeah, I don't think it's ever quite been, you know, something we can let people see, but we had a lot of fun doing it, and it was a learning project. We'll call it that.
So it's not out there for people to watch? Or?
Sadly, not that one. No, I think there's a trailer that we made. It's called Residue, but we just put together a trailer from the project to kind of to pitch it. But yeah, that was definitely a learning project. So yeah.
Were there reactions from the original cast from the Lord of the Rings films, from Peter Jackson to your fan film? Did you ever get to know something about that?
No, we don't know. Okay. No, we kind of were a bit shy to ask or to send it to them because, you know, what if he turned around and said, "This is horrible," or, you know, and you know, it is so low budget, and you can tell, obviously, and you know, I don't know. So I kind of just thought, you know, we thought, let's put it online. Let's give it to the fans. If people want to watch it, if they enjoy it, that's great. And we loved making it. And yeah, we were a bit sort of shy to sort of send it to them. But yeah, so we don't know. Yeah.
Aww. It would have been really interesting because I think what you really see in this movie is that it is made with so much heart and so much love and, you know, so much creativity. I think you really don't have to be shy about that.
Well, I don't know. Yeah, perhaps one day we can. I don't know.
I'll save you with a few more questions.
Who knows?
There's a question that I find really original. In the sack where you had Gollum, it was really small, and Gollum has to be smaller than Aragorn, obviously. So who was in the sack? Was it a child that fitted into the sack?
Well, let's be careful what we say. Well, at one point in the scene, yes, we needed to show the sack with a smaller size, with the actual size of Gollum, and we kind of thought we could use a puppet and we could hide somebody behind a rock and they could put their hand in the sack and kind of, you know, move it with something and kind of puppet, which we did quite a lot. But then at the time, my co-producer Gladys, she was one of the core people making the film with me and still a very good friend. Her son was 4 or 5 years old or something, and he was always hanging around in the production meetings, and he was he was part of the family, and she was like, yeah, he can go in the sack for a bit, and just like to do a bit of that and stuff. And we were like, really, Gladys, are you sure? It might be scary for him, but he kind of knew us all, and he was for him, it was the biggest adventure ever. So he did do only for about a few minutes. He was in the sack just for the shot, and he loved it. He was hiding in there, and he was like reaching out with his hand, and we got this little prosthetic Gollum hand for him as well. So I think he had a good time. And in the end, he was like going on the camera and directing, and there's some brilliant behind the scenes moments where he's kind of looking through the camera and figuring it all out. So yeah, that was Frankie Gallup. So yeah, that was great and looked fantastic. So yeah.
Another question that we got from our audience: which scene do you like the most in The Hunt for Gollum? By the way, great work, enjoyed it.
Oh, thank you. Which scene do I like the most? I there's so many. And so I guess every scene you kind of like for different reasons, but I I can't pick now. I kind of like some of the moments with Gollum when we got to put a few lines from the books into the dialogue for Gollum. And we got him singing, when he's in the sack being carried through the forest, he's singing one of the riddles from Riddles in the Dark, about trees everywhere, trees, what has roots that nobody sees. So a few little homage things like that we managed to get in there, which I wasn't expecting to fit in, and I'm quite happy that got in there. So, yeah.
I think that does make a lot of difference. I mean, that does bring that Tolkienian feeling to the movie, and also it's really an achievement to make a movie out of so little material. So how did you come across Tolkien? What was your way to Tolkien when you first encountered the books?
I think I was 11 or 12, and then I first picked up the books, and I guess I'd read The Hobbit first, probably had, but really it was reading the trilogy, The Lord of the Rings, that just took me away and captured my imagination completely from that age. And I reread it several times through my teenage years, and so it was always really close to my heart. And yeah, I mean, if I was making the film again now, maybe it's a bit long, and we do so many things better. But for such a short bit of the story, because you're right, it's like a micro piece of story. But it's something I missed maybe from the trilogy of films. And I kind of thought it would be fun to kind of have it as if these are the events that took place just beforehand. And yeah, I wanted to kind of bring out some of the things I loved in the books that I perhaps didn't see enough of in the official film trilogy. But also I wanted to like cherry pick and steal and borrow some of the things I loved in the film trilogy, like perhaps the humor of Gollum, or the kind of schizophrenic double-sided two-personality side of him, which I found came out so well in the movies with Andy Serkis' performance. And so I kind of wanted to pay tribute to that, but I also wanted to kind of highlight and bring up the sort of backstory of Aragorn when he was this ranger who kind of was downtrodden, and he didn't really, he sort of had this destiny on his shoulders and this weight, but he didn't really believe in it. And he kind of, he was just kind of in the shadows. And that's a character I found interesting. And that's what I found magical. So I wanted to bring those two characters together. And then, of course, I figured out, well, Gandalf could kind of guide them through. And, there's that chapter in the Council of Elrond, where there's loads of detail in that chapter about Gandalf recounting when he questioned Gollum, what Gollum sort of said to him after they captured him, about Aragorn tracking him down, spending 8 years hunting for him. So I thought it's 8 years in the book, so we can go to 40 minutes with the film. But but yeah, I mean, it's not, it's an interpretation of the story, and it's a bit playful as well as all that. So we tried to do what we could with what we could.
Speaking of 40 minutes, there's another question. Did you do any feature-length movies?
I've worked on a couple of feature-length films since then, yeah. Not really in the same genre, but yes, I'm now currently working on my third feature film as a director, which is a kind of science fiction-y, bit of fantasy epic stuff in there, which is quite exciting, but it's going to be a long time before it's finished, so we'll see. Well, it's going to be a while.
Okay.
But yeah, so I've kind of since then been working in the film industry, initially a lot as a visual effects engineer, and as a junior engineer, and then also developing my filmmaking as a director and working on independent feature films. And so yeah, I'm kind of continuing to kind of develop my filmmaking in that way. Yeah.
Oh, that sounds great. There's another question coming in. What is the red thing in your shelf behind you?
The red thing. This thing. Or this thing. Well, this you can probably see.
I'm not sure. It's not my question.
Well, that's a jigsaw puzzle. I don't know if I'm allowed to show, of Two Towers.
Okay.
And this is a fantastic book, The Movie Maker's Masterclass, which is a really good one. Lots of interviews with great directors, from Scorsese to Tim Burton and so on. So there we go.
I have another question for you. Do you have any fandoms you love besides Tolkien?
Oh, I would say there are none that can equal Tolkien. But yeah, am I a Star Wars fan of some of the original movies? Yeah. We do have in our lives these great sagas, these great epics, and a few of them that are really, really wonderful. So yeah, that's one. In terms of books, one day my dream is to actually adapt a fantasy novel, fantasy literature. So I'm hoping that nobody makes Robin Hobb series before I get to that level in my career. Or, for example, I'm hoping nobody makes a Guy Gabriel Kay, if you know him. He's a fantastic literary fantasy writer, before I get there, but we'll see.
Good. Last question for you, Chris. It's funny because this is also the last question we normally ask when we do interviews for our Tolkien podcast. And it's also a question that someone sent in. So the question is, if Tolkien would still be alive and you had any form of contacting him, what would be something you'd like to ask or share with him?
You know what? It's going to be a bit political. I would ask him his advice on some of the politics that we face today.
Oh.
Because he is a master in inventing. I mean, one of the huge things in Lord of the Rings history is history and politics. He was a master of everything from language to history to politics to the strategy. So I would ask him for advice, and maybe he could paint a future that could inspire a younger generation. In terms of politics, perhaps. That's
great, Chris. That's a really great last words, to end this session with. Thank you very much. It was really great having you. Thank you for answering all of those burning questions. I'm going to swap to German now. But thank you so much for joining us, Chris. All the best, and keep that good work going and keep it up.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.